Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Ready, Set, Respond. We are here today to talk about sense of community. I'm your host, Carla Alisea, Director of Research and Performance with Apartment Ratings and SatisFacts. And today on the program, we have an amazing guest. I'm so excited to introduce him to you all. We've got Steve Wunch from SalesMail Industry Principal. Steve, say hello. We're on air today. We have our cameras on.
Woohoo! Hey everybody, so good to see you. I pulled Carla. I twisted her arm and said we got to have our video on for this one because it's so important to make those connections with folks through video. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But so excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, Carla.
Oh, definitely. I got to meet Steve for the first time. We were at MAA in Massachusetts. He was doing the closing keynote, and he was talking about how we need to get personal before we get to business. And I thought right then and there, that really speaks to sense of community. And if you're one of our clients, if you're a SatisFacts client, you use our surveys, our annual surveys, our insight surveys, you know how important sense of community is when it comes to driving renewal likelihood or that perception of value. You know, we've been following these top drivers for likelihood to renew and that perception of value for such a long time. And I know the screen's a little small, but you can see in black, that's the sense of community. And you can see it is a top 5 driver, top 2 driver for the likelihood to renew, number 1 driver for the perception of value, right? When it comes to building relationships with our residents. So now, guys, don't forget, after today's call, head on over to our social pages. You can add a comment for a chance to win a special little gift with what you took away from today's conversation with Steve. He's going to drop some amazing nuggets about how to build sense of community with your residents. I can't wait to get into that conversation. Do want to also share a little bit of data from our biennial online renter study about sense of community. So this year we asked renters across the country how they would rate the sense of community in their current living environment. So we said, does it feel like home where you live, right? And we have a rating. That's that bar in blue. We broke it down here by region so you can see specifically for your region what sense of community was rated like. Then we asked renters, how important is sense of community to you? And that's that light blue bar at the top, right? So that difference, that's that gap between what they're currently feeling and how important it is to them, okay? And we see that data also in our survey data. And so it's so important that we have this conversation, because I think sometimes we think we can have a pizza party or we could, just communicate, all these different asks of our residents, things we need them to do. And that sense of community is going to be there with their neighbors or with the environment. But really, what is sense of community? So let's ask you guys, there's a QR code on the screen. Let's go ahead and get logged in now, because we're going to start with our Ready, Set, Respond polls. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you think when it comes to sense of community. What is your opinion? So let's start with our first poll. So guys, go ahead and get logged in. I see 3 people logged in, 4 people logged in. Let's get ready to participate. We're going to start off with the question: how do you define a strong sense of community? Is it residents connecting with each other and forming friendships? Is it access to local amenities, restaurants, shops, and neighborhood resources? Or is it residents have a strong positive relationship with the property team? How do you currently define sense of community? Let's hear from you guys. Okay, we've got residents connecting with each other coming in number 1 right now. Still people getting logged in.
We got 160 people here. We've only got 20 people logged in. So come on, share
getting going. It's always slow to start, but they get in there. They get in there.
What's that little hand raise mean down there, Alicia, where I've got 11 hands up?
You know,
Do
that's
you
a
see
good
that?
question. I'm not really sure.
So we do have Q&A. We're going to save that for the end. I don't know if I can't see anything in a chat. Can
Oh,
you?
those are the votes.
Ah,
That's
great.
how many people have voted. So 23 people logged in, 17 voted. They can do reactions as we're talking, give us thumbs
Excellent.
up, smiley faces, happy faces, little laughy
Oh, this is
faces.
great. This is great. Yeah. And this
Isn't
is,
it really interesting to see this in real time, right? How our audience feels, what their definitions are. I think it's
love it.
really important for us, if we're going to have that conversation, to know where we're starting off.
Yep. And I bet you money that what we see here is playing into that gap that you showed us on the slide before, where
Absolutely.
where there's that gap in what is the sense of community, and maybe what we think it is and what our residents think it is maybe two different things.
Maybe.
But you'll
Looks like
have
it
to wait
might be.
for that.
All right, let's move on to our next poll. I think we've got a good idea of what we're working with here. So let's ask on our next poll, how often do you host community events or activities? Is it weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, or never? Where are we at? We've got, okay, monthly. We've got 4 votes monthly. We're doing events once a month. Some people quarterly. Okay. Now we've started asking in our insight surveys if a resident attends community events. And then if they do attend community events, we then ask them to rate those events. And I find it really interesting. Sometimes those ratings come in the 4s, 4.3, 4.5. This is out of a scale of 1 to 5. But sometimes those events are coming in the low 3s. So what's the difference there? Why do some events get rated higher than others? I think we're going to talk about that a little bit, Steve.
Yep, we sure are.
Absolutely. Okay. We got quarterly. We got monthly coming in number 1 at 60%. Quarterly next. Some people annually, a little bit never. Some people weekly. I wonder if there's a difference in those ratings depending on the frequency. All right, let's go to our last poll question before we get into the conversation. And guys, I want you to keep your poll application open throughout the conversation, because we've got a couple more polls and ways for you to give feedback and for you to ask questions at the end using this application. So don't log out, but we want to know right now, from your residents' perspective, how do you think most of them would describe your communication style? When I mean I mean that communication that's coming out of the management office, out of the leasing office, the community team, right, to your resident. Is it voluntold? I love that. Steve gave me that one. Thank you, Steve. You're telling them what they're going to do. Is it more empathetic? Seeing it from their shoes, walking a mile in their shoes and being very empathetic with your residents? Do you think that your communication may come off as aggressive? Now, remember, think about it from the resident's perspective. You were
think about more than just email communication. Think about those face-to-face moments in the office, when you run into it, when you pass by a resident on the property. Hope you're not running into them. But, it's more than just your written and your telephone communication. It's all communication from a resident's perspective.
Yep. All right. So we're going with empathetic, coming in strong with 55%. No one saying they're aggressive. Okay. 28% voluntold. Okay.
If you're not being truthful, the only one you're fooling is yourself.
Well, maybe we have some really. Now, a lot of these are SatisFacts clients, so they might know better already.
Good point, my dear. Good point.
All right. These were some really great polls. Really got us, I think, thinking about sense of community from that renter perspective. So let's just jump into it. Steve, we were talking about, what does creating sense of community mean? Tell the audience, what's your definition? Because I really loved how you defined it and what you think about when you're thinking about this topic and communicating and talking to the industry about developing relationships.
Yep. So for me, I mean, and I am a renter. I live in an apartment community in Richmond, Virginia. It's managed by PRG, which is a great property management company. And, I've heard a lot of conversations around this topic, Carla. And, back in the day when I first started leasing, back in the early 90s, what created a sense of community is very different than what the expectations are today. It was a lot about, connecting with your neighbors, coming to a social environment to make those neighborly connections with one another. Because back then we felt like the more people you knew in your community, the more sticky you would be from a renewal perspective. And we wanted to be able to create those opportunities for you to, make those connections and get a lot of stickiness in there.
Yeah, I remember that.
What we're finding, though, is research shows that the new renter sense of community, that's a small part of it. Like, I just met someone here, actually my leasing consultant, the assistant manager at my property, Chase, he said, I think you and Ivy would really hit it off well. So like, he knew us well enough to say, I think, and she's actually become she's my Richmond BFF. We do all kinds of things together. We're holding each other accountable for walking and staying well. And I would not have met her had it not been for him introducing me. But on top of that, and really weighing more heavily with today's renter, is it's about the relationship that you have with your residents. They want a strong relationship with the team in the office. That more than anything, more than bingo, more than Taco Tuesday, more than Trivia Thursdays, and all those things that are fabulous, they want a relationship with you guys in the office. And so anything that you can do to leverage, and we're going to talk a little bit about one of my principles, which is get personal before you get to business, leveraging every moment, every interaction that you have, every opportunity to communicate with them in a very personalized, like I even want to say hyper personalized way, is what really matters to creating that new sense of community and that new sticky feeling that we really want residents to have.
Absolutely. And you talked a little bit about how it's not just face-to-face, it's how we integrate technology to enable those relationships. We're using face-to-face and technology now to create those personalized interactions. So guys, I've got another, it's not a poll, it's a word cloud. So what actions or strategies do you use to enhance sense of community? Steve and I were just kind of curious. What are some of the things that you contribute to your success with your residents in building that sense of community? So while you're entering that, let's talk a little bit about your philosophy. What do we call it again? GP before B?
Before B. Yep. GP before B. Get personal before you get to business. So, what we do every day, you guys, is very transactional. We accept rent checks, we take service requests, we send out notices. A lot of the administrative functions that we, spend a lot of our time during our day are these transactional moments. But what I really talk about in my platforms, and this would be the keynote that Carla saw in Boston, is just taking those transactional moments and humanizing them, remembering that on the other end of that late notice, on the other end of that renewal letter, on the other end of that pet violation, on the other end of all those things that we do every single day as a property management professional, there is a person who is living and experiencing all the things that happen in their life right in your product. And so it's just it's not rocket science, and it's probably nothing that you haven't heard before, but just taking a minute. And I love that we had 55% communication style was empathetic, because empathy plays a big role in it. You don't have to agree with them, but you for sure can see it from their perspective. I hate it when I get a late fee. And you know what I hate most is it's my dumb fault because I forgot to pay. So I'm more mad at myself than I am at anybody else or the process. But just having that moment to humanize before we have that conversation or before we have that interaction, whether it be face-to-face or virtual, just remembering that there's a person on the other end of that experience who knows what they're going through. And just that little moment of a reminder to ourselves can change how we show up in those instances.
Absolutely. So, guys, this is it. Get personal before you get to business, right? I think that is such great advice, especially I know myself. I am all business, I am black and white. Someone comes in, I'm like, let's get it done. And since I saw Steve speak, I have been trying to implement that a little bit into my conversations with others. How are you doing? How is your day? Tell me a little bit about, I heard that your kid just went back to school. How are they doing at school? Or, oh, I saw your little pup got groomed the other day. They looked so cute. How old are they? Questions are a really great way to get to know somebody. So asking some questions to get to know your residents a little bit better personalizes that experience and then allows the next interaction. Oh, hey, you told me about, that you're engaged. How's that wedding planning going, right? So the more you incorporate just a little bit before you get down to business, the easier it becomes, right? In the beginning, it might be a little hard. It's a perfect stranger in front of you.
Right.
But ask questions. Remember, the next time you can build on that and a little bit and a little bit. And the next thing you know, you have a wonderful relationship and your residents are bringing pies to the office instead of running in the opposite direction when they see you coming. Am I right, Steve?
Right, 100%. And you don't overthink it. It doesn't have to be the most eloquent question ever uttered by mankind. It's as simple as, how's your day going? And you know what? If they say, I'm having the worst day ever, be like, I'm so sorry to hear that. I hate bad days. But you know what? The next 5 minutes with me, I'm going to try to make you smile. And it's as easy as that. And just, again, taking that moment. I printed something. Well, I don't have a printer, so I rely on the team in the office to print things for me. And today I said, hey, would you mind printing something off for me? And Haley responds, sure, no problem. Come on down and get it when you're ready. I walk in the door and it's not, here's your printout. It's, oh, hi, Steve. How are you doing? It's been so long since I've seen you. How was your weekend? What are you going to do this weekend? And then, 5 to 10 minutes later, here comes my printout and have a great day. It was great to see you. So, really just taking a minute to personalize and humanize. We know so much about our residents. And if we can remember what apartment number they live in, we can sure as heck remember their name, the name of their kids, their pets, the things that matter most to them. When birthdays happen, when anniversaries happen, you mentioned some of those things, new jobs, take a minute and acknowledge those things. It's a wonderful opportunity to create that stickiness that we want.
Yes. So I'm going to share with you guys a story. Steve and I were working on coming up with a name for this webinar. And I came up with something that was horrible. And Steve goes, well, what about it's a wonderful day in the neighborhood? So then I shared a story with Steve about how my father would wake my sister and I up every morning to go to school, singing that song from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, if you don't know what Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is, maybe you can Google that. It was a popular TV show for children, back in the 80s, I think the 70s and the 80s. And he used to sing this song, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Anyway, my dad would wake my sister up with that song we were in high school. He kept doing it our entire lives. So when Steve proposed the title, I was like, that's it. That's the title where we're going with. I told him why. Now here's what Steve did. About a couple days later, he recorded himself singing that song and sent it to me. And it really just moved me to tears, good, happy tears. But that empathy, that connection, he listened to that story. He knew that was an important memory from my past that I shared with him. And he built that relationship with me as we were working on building our professional relationship. I will never forget that, Steve. And because of that, you just have a very special place in my heart. And those are the types of relationships that really go a long way to the likelihood to renew, the likelihood to recommend, the perception of value between our residents. with their apartment communities, with our service, right? I think I heard the other day something about customer service isn't enough anymore, right?
Mm-mm.
They expect customer service. How do we go above and beyond customer service, right?
All
So,
it takes is a little intention, and
yes.
what one thing that we didn't, I mean, I think you said it early on in the telecast here, but listen to hear, don't listen to respond. I could have listened to respond to her story about her dad and be like, oh, my dad used to tell me stories, and I could have interrupted or whatever that looks like. But instead, listening to hear and taking that in and really letting it set in and marinate, and then leveraging what I've heard later, that's a huge win for you. And I'm telling you what, you're going to hear the same crap day in and day out, the same excuses. People's grandparents are going to die multiple times, the same grandparent. And it's so easy in the leasing office to listen to respond because we hear the same stuff all the time. But when you take a minute and you listen to hear, and then you remember what was said and you leverage it, that really gives you the opportunity to create some personal moments that matter to people.
Steve, talk about the emotional bank account, because I really also loved this concept of yours. How do we use this concept in building that sense of community?
So again, this comes down to looking at your day-to-day as not transactional. Everything you do, it's either an opportunity to establish a new relationship with someone you don't know. It's an opportunity to renew a relationship with someone you know and you want to keep around. And it's an opportunity to sustain the relationships with the folks that you're serving on a daily basis. And so Stephen Covey has this concept around an emotional bank account that says, every time you interact with somebody, if you make it a positive interaction, and positive interactions doesn't necessarily mean that they get their way, they get free rent, they get a refund, they get that. It's just they get acknowledged that they're human. We take care of their needs. We listen. Every time you do that, no matter what you're dealing with, it's an opportunity to put money in what he called an emotional bank account. Every relationship has one. So this is going to work for not only your customers, but maybe your spouse or your significant other, your kids. And every time you do that, hey, if somebody comes in and they pay their rent on time, thank you so much for paying your rent on time. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. You just put money in the bank. If you finish a service request and you look around and you see something else that needed to be done and you go ahead and do it, and then you say, and while I was in there fixing your garbage disposal, I also noticed that you had a light bulb that was out. I went ahead and changed that for you. You just put money in the bank. And what we need to do, Carla, is we need to make sure that when the day comes, because it'll come, we're not always perfect. We're going to mess up, or it's going to be a renewal letter with an increase that they're not anticipating. But do we have enough funds in the bank so that when we have to make a withdrawal, we're not going to bounce that check and damage the relationship beyond repair? Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense. And we talk about this a lot when we're communicating with our renters, with our residents, right? As the landlord, I hate that word, but that's what residents call us. I mean, if you ask any renter, they call us the landlord. They don't call us the property managers. They're the landlord. We have to ask our residents for things all the time, right? We have to ask them to move their cars because we're repaving the driveway. We have to ask them to quiet their dog because their neighbors are complaining. We have to ask them to pay their late fees because they forgot. Maybe they were on vacation that day. And so having that bank account of positive interactions makes those asks that much easier, right? So I really loved that concept. All right, Steve, let's talk about events, because we had that poll earlier, and we talked a little bit about the data around events, some of them coming in highly rated, some of them not so highly rated. Some people are doing events, monthly, some people quarterly. How should we be doing events? What's the right way to do a resident event?
Yeah, well, I'm sure every organization that's on as a partner has some policy in place regarding resident events. Typically, we should be doing something monthly. Maybe your company has a quarterly approach, which is fine. It gives you more time to plan. The thing is we assume too often times that we know what people want. So we're going to do a pizza party. We're going to do tacos and trivia. we come up with these ideas on our own, and sometimes they just don't resonate with residents that live at our communities. For example, I think about, we used to have to post a social minimum of 3 times a day. And I would see all these communities posting, like recipes and cooking techniques. And the demographic that lived at the property was students who are using DoorDash, or they're eating out, or they're eating Domino's,
Mm-hmm.
So you got to really make sure that what you're offering actually, the word is salient. It means something to the demographic that lives at your community. And the best way to find out is to be curious. Instead of assuming, let's send out a poll. Hey, would you guys like to have a trivia night? Would you like to do tacos and talking? Would you like to do a wine tasting? Or what ideas do you have? And by
open-ended.
Opening that question up, you're going to get responses. You're going to have a better understanding into what's going to really resonate with folks. And the better you get at that, I'm going to guarantee you're going to see better turnout at your events. You're going to see people engaged and wanting to come. The team here where I live at the Locks in Richmond, they're fantastic about events. They ask us what we want while we're there during an event. They're asking about feedback. How has this been? Are you enjoying yourself? What do you think of the tacos? Should we do this again? And we love it. And I missed both of them this month because of my travel schedule. And I was so bummed. I had to RSVP no. And I was like, oh, I hate to do this. And that to me is because the team is so engaged and they're really present. Even the service team is at those events, connecting with residents and learning about the residents and showing that they're engaged in what's happening in our community. And it just makes it such a great time for everybody.
Yeah, I think events are a really great way to give back to our community.
Yes.
And events don't have to be big and grandiose. You can have those big grandiose events, monthly or quarterly or annually, but you can do little things here and there. Trivia night, game night, gardening presentations. I personally love gardening. I'm bad at it, but I keep trying to get better. So if I lived in a community that brought in local gardeners and did little presentations, that would really resonate with me. So
even having a food truck visit, a food truck visit.
Yes.
And
diversify.
Don't let your budget limit you. If you don't have a good budget for this stuff, reach out to your supplier partners. They're more than happy to help. Reach out to local vendors or local restaurants or local businesses. They would love the opportunity to share what they're doing with your captive audience and help you create some really awesome events for your residents. I even did some pay to participate in Chicago. We would we would organize a coach bus to take people to the Cubs game so that they didn't have to worry about parking. They could drink as many beers as they want and they wouldn't have to worry about driving home under the influence. And it cost them $35 a pop. And they freaking loved it. We didn't charge more than the cost of the coach per person, but it was a win and everybody loved it. So, think outside the box, don't limit yourself, but do try to make it happen because these are the things that matter.
And when you have an event, isn't it important for the team to show up and engage with the residents?
100%. Everybody should be there. It shouldn't be a drudgery. If you dread going to a resident function, you should rethink why you're here. Because the residents who live, there's nothing better for your NOI than a resident who signs a renewal lease, keeping the back door closed, keeping you from having to turn a unit, have vacancy loss, have to spend money to market it, have 3 or 4 people apply. Maybe they get approved or not. The more you can do to keep people happy, the better off you'll be. So show up for those events and show up with a smile and be engaged.
Yeah, it's a great time to get to know your renters even more.
100%.
We have a little board here if you guys want to add in any events that you have done that you felt were really popular with your residents. Share with the community here on Ready, Set, Respond. Feel free to get logged back in and go ahead and share away. Steve, you work for a company that I think is really interesting, SalesMail. And I think it really resonates with what we're talking about, sense of community and connecting using technology with our residents. So can you share a little bit more about that while our participants are sharing their event ideas? Could you talk a little bit about how to use video to increase sense of community?
Yeah. So sales mail is the easiest way to send personalized video messages via email, text, or CRM. So you're able to leverage all of your communication platforms. And it's a fully branded message that has the property's logo above it. A link to the website will take the viewer to the property's website. Below is your contact information. There's ways for them to give you emojis. They can leave comments. You can also put a call to action button in. So if you're doing a resident event, you can link to the RSVP right through your video message. And you can leverage our tool in multiple use cases: resident engagement, lease follow-up, tour follow-up, pre-tour reminders. There's all kinds of ways that you can take, and even like if you're using Rent Cafe and you can text message an entire building that the water's going to be shut off, instead of just sending a flat text, how cool would it be for them to get a message from you saying, hey, it's Steve from the office. I just wanted to let you guys know that the water is going to be shut off at building 300 between the hours of 11 and 2 o'clock. I will follow up with you through the process and let you know once everything's been resolved. If you've got any questions, you've got my telephone number below. Please feel free to reach out to us. Totally changes what is typically a voluntold message, helps them see you again, make that personalized connection. And nothing, video is the future. Video is what people are drawn to. And we show up as so the first 3 seconds of your message turn into an animated GIF or GIF. So it shows up as an animated picture of Steve waving in your inbox if it's an email, in your text inbox if it's a text message. And you can easily copy and paste these messages right into your CRM. If you're emailing customers directly from your CRM, it's easy as pie. And I'm telling you what, it's making a huge difference in creating this sense of community, sense of stickiness, personalized relationships with the team in the office. And you're not just a face that they see when they move in and when they move out.
Yeah.
I mean, he is saying, how you doing?
Communication, so much of communication is nonverbal. And you lose that in an email. You lose that in a text message. Video puts that nonverbal, that human, that empathy back into your communications. So definitely something to consider when you're trying to build that sense of community. Adding video into your communications, definitely something I'm seeing more of in our industry. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Steve, do you see pajama brunch on this list? I love that. I would go to that.
That was one of the first things that I noticed. That looks hilarious.
Yeah, I love it. I would go to that. Absolutely.
As long as they don't sleep in the nude, I am all about that.
Well, guys, before we end our call today, I have a screen up here where you can ask questions. I've never used this before. So if you have a question for Steve, you want to know a little bit more, go ahead and add it in here. So we've got one question. Can you send more information on the program you're talking about to interact with your residents? We typically do a follow-up email to all those who attended and registered. I will ask my team that sends out that email to put in Steve's contacts information about sales mail. But if you want to connect with him directly, here he is. Scan that QR code. That's going to take you, I believe, to your, oh no, it's going to take you to a video message from Steve. And then there's some links in there also where you can connect with him as well. So definitely there. Let's see if there are any other questions we've got. Can you show a sample of sales mail? Well, here we go. Scan that QR code. You'll see exactly what we're talking about. And then what have been your favorite events you've attended and have noticed were successful? Steve, so let's have you answer that one first.
So yeah, I mean, here at the Locks where I live, it's been tacos. I'm telling you what, I could eat Mexican food every day of the week, and I love it. And a lot of people feel the same. They do a lot of tacos and trivia, or something in trivia, and it's fun because the trivia is it creates a competition. They've got prizes to give away, so residents are really engaged and competing with one another. We get together as teams, and so I'm teamed up with people who I don't know within the community, which is a great way for me to get to meet folks. And then they also do every the third Thursday of the month, they do a thing at a place called the Railway Tap House. It's a restaurant that's within walking distance of our community. The restaurant sponsors appetizers and 1 drink coupon per resident. And it's just a social time. We show up, we eat, we socialize as long as we want to. You can be as visible or as invisible as you want to here, but they've really created some great moments. And plus they're, showing you how walkable the neighborhood is. They're supporting local businesses and creating great relationships with local vendors. So those are things I think that work really well.
I managed a building in downtown Long Beach. This was early 2000s. I had a resident that was a DJ, and it was a mid-rise with a central courtyard. Then the courtyard had barbecues. We would routinely throw block parties where the DJ would pull out his equipment. We'd DJ in the courtyard. We'd grill in the courtyard. We'd have dominoes. We'd have board games. And our residents really loved that. They enjoyed coming down, socializing, grabbing some food, going back up. We also had a huge following of residents who like to play poker. So we organized poker nights. Now, I don't know if that was legal, but we did it and they loved it. So all the residents knew when it was poker nights, we would have so much fun. And again, it's because we knew who our renters were. We got to know what they wanted, and we made sure that we were hosting them. And those always went over really well.
One of the things here, they're getting ready to do some capital improvements here at my property. And of course, the team all had some great ideas of what they wanted to see done. But Chelsea, the manager, was like, so residents, would you rather have a fire pit and maybe some cornhole games on the pool area? Would you want to have, a refresh, different color paint in your building hallways? So she actually had several options that we could all vote on. And then they finally came to vote that we're going to get a fire pit and some cornhole down by the pool area. And it's what we wanted. It's exactly what we wanted. And they installed barbecue grills last year because we wanted barbecue grills. So, just again, we could take that ball and run with it on ourselves, and we know what we can do and we know what works, but we can also remember there's a human element, and let's listen to what the humans that live at our properties want to have happen.
Yeah. We have Ashley asking, what are good days and times to do events?
For us, it's typically Thursday. I don't know why, but that's kind of what we do, unless it's tacos. And a lot of times they'll play off of the Taco Tuesday theme. But, so I think, again, ask your residents, what days, what days of the week work best for you. And remember, don't do something at 4:30 because everybody's still at work unless they're working from home. Remember, they've got to get home, probably get changed, maybe want to chill for a minute. So starting those a little bit later in the evening and letting them go until, from maybe 7 to 9, I bet you'd see a much better turnout as well.
I'd also say mix it up, because you may have some residents who can come on a Tuesday evening, but you may have some that can't. Right? Yeah. So mix it up so that different residents can come to the different events. And there's some options for them. Yeah. All right, guys, this was a fantastic conversation. Steve, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
You are fantastic. I just could not wait to introduce you to our client partners and industry friends here at SatisFacts. Guys, we're going to give away that little personalized gift to whatever comment on our social media that just really nails sense of community and what they took away from today's program. So again, yes, absolutely. And then we're going to talk next month in October. We're going to talk a little bit about fee transparency transparency, I know it's not everybody's favorite topic, but it's becoming more important
Yeah.
in the industry, right? What we're advertising versus what we are actually charging, aligning with those resident and renter expectations. How can an on-site team member make sure that they have a positive impact on that fee transparency when maybe the systems aren't quite working the way we'd like them to? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're bringing on legal counsel to share some of the trends that he's seeing in this arena, specifically around legislation that's being passed. So we want to prepare for that transition, try to maybe fend off some of that legislation by making sure that our prospects are well informed. So we'll get that email out to register for that session next month. But right now, I want you to have a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And thank you so much.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? See you later.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
You know I had to sing.
Absolutely.